The day the guards walked off the unit, what happened next became one of the darkest secrets in federal prison history. Before we start, hit that subscribe button if you're brave enough to hear a story the federal system never wanted the outside world to know. There are days inside U.S. federal prisons that officers quietly acknowledge but never speak about. Days where protocol collapses, authority disappears, and men who were supposed to be protected fall through the cracks. One of those days happened in 2012 inside a high-security federal penitentiary in California. Official reports refer to it as Unit Disengagement Protocol. But the men who lived through it call it something else. The day the guards walked off the unit. It began with a staffing shortage. According to public union reports from the same era, several federal prisons, especially in California and Texas, were dangerously understaffed. Officers routinely worked double shifts. Some worked triple. Many were exhausted, burned out, and operating on survival mode. On that morning, only 3 officers were assigned to a housing unit built for more than 100 inmates. Inside the unit were some of the most notorious prison groups in the system. The Mexican Mafia, Aryan Brotherhood, Fresno Bulldogs, Serenos, and a handful of independent inmates who navigated daily life in a place where the smallest mistake could cost them everything. At 8:14 a.m., an argument broke out between 2 inmates over something as simple as TV time. Something federal reports show sparks hundreds of fights every decade. Officers rushed in, separated the men, and placed the entire unit on standby lockdown. But while escorting one inmate toward the showers, an officer spotted something that made his blood run cold. A metal rod hidden under a bunk. Every officer in the unit immediately recognized what it meant. A single weapon inside a high-security unit rarely remains alone. Where there's one, there are usually more. The lieutenant ordered a full shakedown, but with only 3 officers available, the operation was impossible. Radios crackled with denials from staffing. No extra support. No available units. Proceed with caution. At 9:02 a.m., an older officer named Ramirez made a decision that would later spark years of internal debate. He gathered the other 2 staff members and said quietly, "We can't control this tier with 3 men. Not today." He ordered the officers to step off the unit. Just like that, the prison housing area was left unsupervised. In federal documents, disengagement is allowed only under extreme circumstances, but it is supposed to be temporary, measured in minutes. On this day it lasted hours. The door to the unit slid shut behind the last officer. The moment the locks clicked, the inmates realized something was wrong. No staff voices. No keys. No commands. No movement. The cameras were still on, but cameras don't intervene. Cameras only watch. For a full minute, the men stayed still. Some stood near railings, others in day rooms, others leaning against walls. It was the quiet before a storm nobody wanted. An independent inmate named Aaron, who later gave testimony to outside investigators, described the moment like this. When the officer stepped off, every man's instincts kicked in. People think riots explode instantly. Nah. First comes stillness. Everyone watching everyone. The gangs noticed first. The white groups moved to one side. The Hispanic groups moved to another. The few black inmates in the unit grouped together, aware they were outnumbered and exposed. This wasn't a riot yet. This was preparation. Aaron remembered hearing someone whisper, "Lock your door," but the electronic door controls were offline. The inmates had no control. Nobody did. By 10:07 a.m., with no staff returning, every man knew something unimaginable had happened. They were locked in together with no officers present, no supervision, and no barriers between alliances that had been at war for decades. Then someone shouted the words every federal inmate fears. "The tier is ours." And the entire unit erupted. When the words, "The tier is ours," echoed through the unit, everything inside Aaron seemed to freeze. He had been locked up for years, survived riots, lockdowns, and political wars between gangs, but nothing was like this. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't a planned attack. This was every man on his own inside a cage built for war. The sound hit first. Shoes pounding. Metal scraping. Doors slamming. Men yelling names, warnings, numbers. In a high-security prison, chaos doesn't explode all at once. It unfolds like a chain reaction, each second feeding the next. Aaron backed into the closest corner, hands trembling. He wasn't affiliated. He had no car, no gang protection, no backup. Men like him never lasted long in situations like this. He pressed his back against the wall, whispering to himself the same thing he whispered during every lockdown. Just breathe. God, just let me breathe. Across the tier, members of rival gangs were forming into tight circles. You could hear them speaking low, fast, strategizing. Gangs inside the federal system move with military precision when they need to. It isn't fiction. Court testimony, federal indictments, and FBI reports have documented for decades how they coordinate under pressure. The Hispanics lined the railings. The white groups moved toward the stairs. The black inmates huddled together near the showers, outnumbered but unwilling to back down. But no one made the first move. Not yet. It was the silence, the same awful silence Aaron had once felt before a tornado in his childhood, that terrified him the most. Men weren't shouting threats. They weren't even looking for someone to strike first. They were waiting. For what, he didn't know. But every heartbeat felt like a countdown. Then, through the chaos, something human cut through, an older man kneeling near the phones. Mr. Taylor. He was soft-spoken, almost 60, and had spent decades trying to avoid trouble. He wasn't a gangster. He wasn't a fighter. He was a man who kept to himself, wrote his daughter letters every week, and collected newspaper clippings from the library. And right then he was praying. Aaron could barely hear him over the noise, but the words were unmistakable. Keep us safe. Keep me from seeing something I can't unsee again. That again hit Aaron in the gut. Behind him, two younger inmates started arguing, fear turning into aggression. You're bringing heat to us. Back up. Don't touch me. Aaron closed his eyes and held his breath. He could feel emotion rising in his chest, not anger but something like grief. Grief for what he knew was coming. Because the truth was this. In federal prisons, when officers vanish from a high-security unit, people don't survive through strength. They survive through alliances, timing, and luck. And luck didn't favor men like Aaron or Mr. Taylor. At 10:23 a.m., a sharp metallic clang echoed from the far corner. Someone had knocked a loose bolt free from a table frame. Weapons in prison don't need to be sharp, they just need to be held by fearful hands. That small sound was enough. The entire unit erupted. Men rushed toward each other. Others ran toward whatever corner felt safest. Some screamed in fear. Others in rage. Aaron ducked behind a steel table, heartbeat hammering in his ears, whispering, "Please, not today. Please." He peeked over the table and saw something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Not violence, but fear. Pure, unfiltered fear in the eyes of grown men who had survived decades inside America's most dangerous prisons. Then something shocking happened. It wasn't a fight that stopped the chaos. It wasn't force. It wasn't dominance. It was a voice. A single voice shouting from the top tier. Enough. Stop. Look around you. The voice belonged to Santos, a former shot caller for a Hispanic group who had lost most of his influence after years in segregation. He wasn't supposed to have authority anymore. He wasn't supposed to be someone people listened to. But he stood at the railing, chest heaving, eyes burning, not with anger but with pain. We're doing exactly what they expect us to do. Look at yourselves, we're tearing each other apart for what? For a mistake they made. Something in that moment shifted. Men stopped. Breathing slowed. Weapons lowered. For the first time that day, Aaron felt hope pinch at his ribs. But hope inside a place like this rarely lasts. Just as Santos tried to speak again, a faint alarm began echoing through the facility, a sound every inmate knows too well. A sound that means only one thing. The officers were coming back. And when they returned, they wouldn't ask questions. They wouldn't want explanations. They would assume the worst. Santos looked down, eyes full of fear. They're going to blame us for all of this. And he was right. The alarm echoed through the unit like a distant siren underwater, muffled, delayed, terrifying. Every man inside knew exactly what it meant. The moment officers re-entered a high-security unit after losing control, They came in fast, hard, and assuming the worst. Aaron pressed himself deeper behind the steel table, heart shaking in his chest. He wasn't afraid of the officers themselves. He was afraid of what panic and misunderstanding could create in a place already drowning in fear. Across the tier, the older man, Mr. Taylor, slowly tried to stand, gripping the phone pole to steady himself. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Please, let them see we're not fighting. Please, God." But the officers wouldn't see calm. They would see chaos. Weapons on the ground. Groups clustered together. A unit without control. And once the door opened, everything would be interpreted through the lens of danger. Santos stood at the top tier, hands raised in the air. He looked like a man caught between two worlds, the one that shaped him and the one he wished could exist. "Everyone sit down. Show your hands. Don't move when they come in." Some listened. Others panicked. Some tried to hide objects that could be seen as weapons. Others backed into corners, not wanting to be mistaken for aggressors. It didn't matter. The situation was already bigger than them. At 10:41 a.m. the electronic lock clicked. The sound was louder than any shout. The steel door slid open. And for a moment, just a moment, silence returned. Then, down, down, down. "Let's go. Hands up. Move and you will be stopped." Boots thundered into the unit. Shields raised. Batons out. Pepper launchers ready. CERT teams don't walk. They charge. Because to them, a unit without supervision is a battlefield. Aaron dropped to his knees instantly. His hands shook as he pressed them to the concrete. He could feel tears burning at the corners of his eyes, but he kept his head down. He didn't want to be seen. He didn't want to be mistaken. He didn't want to be another name on a report. The pepper launchers fired first, bursting clouds of orange mist into the air. Even from behind the table, Aaron felt his eyes sting and fill with tears. He coughed, choking, gasping for breath. His lungs felt like they were folding in on themselves. Men screamed, not in aggression but in pain, confusion, fear. Some begged officers not to shoot. Others shouted, "I'm down. I'm down." But the fog made everything blurry, frantic, loud. And then came the moment Aaron never forgot. A moment he wished he could blister out of his memory. Through stinging eyes, he saw Mr. Taylor, the older man, the one who prayed, standing near the phones, disoriented from the pepper spray. He wasn't threatening anyone. He wasn't resisting. He was coughing so hard he couldn't breathe. An officer shouted at him, "Get down. Now." But Mr. Taylor couldn't hear clearly. He tried to raise his hands. He tried to kneel. His legs buckled under him. And the CERT line surged forward. Aaron screamed, "No. He's not fighting." But his voice was lost in the chaos. Lost in the fog. Lost in the fear. Mr. Taylor collapsed to the floor, clutching his chest. The officers moved past him, neutralizing threats, clearing corners, restoring control. But Aaron knew something was wrong. Mr. Taylor wasn't breathing right. After the unit was secured, inmates were cuffed, lined up, and escorted out. Aaron watched helplessly as medical staff rushed in. He saw them kneel next to Mr. Taylor. Saw their expressions change. Saw their movements go from urgent, to slow, to still. Minutes later, the announcement echoed across the building. Medical emergency. Code response. But it was too late. Mr. Taylor died on the cold concrete floor of a unit left unsupervised. Not from violence. Not from an inmate. But from fear, shock, and a heart that couldn't survive the chaos. The official report would later call it a medical complication during a use of force intervention. That phrase burned its way into Aaron's memory. A complication. As if the man never had a name. Never had a daughter. Never prayed for safety minutes before the chaos erupted. In the days that followed, National Prison Union leaders criticized staffing shortages. Internal memos blamed unexpected inmate behavior. Administrators blamed rapidly evolving circumstances. Everyone pointed fingers. No one accepted guilt. And the truth, the full truth, never made it beyond the prison walls. Not until years later, when men like Aaron, released back into the world, spoke to investigative journalists and advocacy groups. He told them, "People don't understand. Officers want to go home safe. Inmates want to stay alive. But when the system breaks, everybody loses." They asked him what he remembered most about that day. He didn't mention the chaos. He didn't mention the gangs. He didn't mention the fear. He said only this: "I remember the look on Mr. Taylor's face. He wasn't scared of us. He was scared of being forgotten." And in a system built on punishment and silence, that fear was the most human thing of all.